Karen. I'm so excited to be here. Hello, everyone.
Excited to have you too. And you're in Texas at the moment? Well,
I am in Houston, Texas. So I am very close to Gulf of Mexico. And I've lived in Texas for about 18 years or so now. And of course, anybody who knows Texas accent, they all realize, wait, this is not Texas accent. Well, originally, I'm from the former Soviet Union, and I've been in the United States for about 25, 26 years now.
anybody who moves country, completely moves country, has my admiration because I just, I think it's not just moving to a different place that's familiar. It's moving to a completely unfamiliar place, and also there's a language barrier, and I don't care
Yes,
even because Russian's your first language, and then
yes.
in America, English is the first language. But even if you had English in Russia, it's still not the same. When you land
No.
in a place where everyone speaks English, you notice that English is definitely not the same as you.
No, it's very different. And also, I think that's what happens in most countries, or at least in the former Soviet Union. We all learned British English.
Yeah.
We didn't know American English. And for the last few years, when I was in the university, I was working part-time for an American company, Accidental Petroleum, which is right here in Houston. But I was kind of slowly picking up more of American language, so to speak, American,
Mm.
words, expressions. I was getting used to the accent. So I was kind of feeling myself a lot more comfortable hearing Americans speak and speaking to Americans, though British English was still easier for me.
Mm.
And I was also working part-time as an interpreter, though very unofficial, just like friends would ask me, hey, somebody comes, can you help? Even though my English was not anywhere that good back then. And I remember somebody asked me to interpret for a couple from Australia. And I'm like, well, it's probably going to be close to a British English. I couldn't understand a word. Like that whole accent thing threw me off so much. I felt so embarrassed. It's like the good things are not paying me or anything, like, because that would be like really embarrassing. I'm like, I'm just trying to pick up a word out of a sentence to even translate something, but it's very, very different. So
Yeah.
when I came to the United States, it was, of course, a big shift, cultural shift primarily, but I was a software engineer. I just graduated with honors from the university. I worked, I had experience, I had references. So it was a lot easier, I think. And also just the fact that I knew how to program, and I got my master's degree pretty much right away as soon as I came in computer science. And so I kind of started off in IT, which I think personally it's the easiest way to start, because programming is a
Yeah.
language of its own, and everybody speaks that same language when they're developers, regardless what
Yeah.
kind of accent you have. I'm a visual learner, so my ears are not as good. So like even right now, I cannot tell a difference in Australian versus New Zealand accent, even though I have students in both. I cannot, I don't hear it. But I can hear the difference between like proper British and Australian and
Yeah.
American.
Yeah.
And of course, understanding you now is like, it's like, what, why couldn't I understand it? What was the problem? Now it's easy, but it's been 25 years.
Yeah. I got to tell you, Australians definitely have their own little. We have our own
Yes,
lingo. It's we call it
yes.
strine, and we're so bloody lazy. We're lazy, and we put vowels on the end of every word. If your name's John, it's Jono and Steve-O and Dicko, and
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that, which was like, oh wait, what was it? Oh, and now I pay attention to this. I think it's wonderful. I think it's lovely. But bringing us back to public speaking, because a lot of I would say half of my students, for them, English is not their first language. And
right?
I think that's an additional barrier. They all in the back of their minds, they all have this story that they're judging me
Yeah,
because of my accent, and that kind of an extra layer of being afraid of public speaking. And
yeah,
so I totally understand those people for whom English is not the first language, because I've had to go through the same journey, and I've had the same story in my head,
yeah.
and I had to overcome the same limitations, obviously.
Did you ever, like come over from Russia and see yourself as somebody who would be helping others? Just
Oh my
being
gosh.
particularly in an English country. No, wasn't even on your cards.
No, oh my gosh. I wouldn't even imagine myself doing it in my native language. When I was little, I remember, 7, 8 years old, if I had to ask an adult something or come to an adult and have a conversation, it would be so hard for me that even one on one, I would be all, would blush and I would get all sweaty and I wouldn't know what to say and my words would be stuck. It's like, it's crazy. I remember being scared even of one person. And then when I was 10 years old, I was asked to recite a poem on stage in front of a huge audience, recite from memory, and they gave me the poem that same day, which sounds
Oh,
totally crazy and unbelievable, but that's from a Soviet Union for you. So they gave, they gave me this poem, and it was like on 2 pages. And I mean, I am blessed with good memory and everything, but I'm like, okay, I'll learn it. Yeah, sure, I'll go in 4 hours or whenever. And I'm stepping on the stage for the first time in my life all alone. I did recite something before and as a group of people, but being alone in front of a microphone in front of 1,000 people, the lights on you, it was so scary and overwhelming and nerve-wracking. I still remember how I'm standing there and my mind is completely blank and I'm shaking and sweat is rolling down my back and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm so terrified. I don't remember what to say. And then I said what I thought was the first line. And as soon as I heard my voice echo in the speakers, I realized that was a wrong line and I stopped again. And people are now like totally giggling in the audience
oh,
looking at me. And I ran off stage in tears and I was like, you know what? This is not my thing. Clearly, I would never ever do this again. So if somebody asked me that evening, hey, you want to be a public speaking coach? I would be like, you people are crazy. Because that was the thing that I thought I would never, ever not teach, but even do. And then, years later, when I moved to the United States, shortly after I started working as a software developer, I'm very entrepreneurial and I decided to start my own business on the side. And I did. But because I'm so old, that was so long ago, it was before Facebook and before YouTube, and you had to actually go out there
yeah.
and speak to people. Like you couldn't, message. You had to go and speak to people and speak in front of large groups to attract clients into your world. And I, I was as terrified as when I was 10, but I knew I had to. I didn't have a choice. And I read and I watched videos and like some training and listened to advice of people who said, just do it scared, fake it till you make it, practice makes perfect. And so I followed this advice. And I think where a lot of people will relate to this, it didn't work for me.
Mm,
Just like it doesn't work for a lot of people who hear practice makes perfect and they spend months or years in front of an audience and every single time they're just as terrified. It just
mm,
doesn't go away. And the truth is, when we do something incorrectly, with the incorrect mindset, with incorrect, just incorrectly in the wrong way, all we're doing is we're building a habit. And the more you repeat forcing, through fear, the more you repeat trying to be brave and courageous and just do it, the more you form a habit that every time you speak in front of an audience, you have to feel scared,
mm,
and it becomes a very hard habit to break, and it usually stays with you. You
mm,
just never learn to enjoy it if you were truly scared. And so I realized I was doing it all wrong. I kind of started shifting things. I started changing the way I was thinking about it, primarily not how I was doing it, but how I was thinking, because I realized it's all in your head.
mm,
It's all in your head. And once I started changing my mindset, I started seeing some shifts. I started seeing how things started slowly becoming easier. And it truly took me years. And even then, I wasn't trying, to teach anybody. I was just trying to get better myself. And as I would, and I continued building businesses, I continued having a corporate career. And as I would do trainings or presentations or whatever I was doing in front of large groups, every time at the end, somebody would come to me and would say, loved it. You
oh,
were so great. We just loved it. Can you, like, you're such a natural. Can you teach me how to be a natural? And I'm like, I'm not a natural. You can't even imagine how scared I used to be. But what I realized, what I didn't realize before, and what really dawned on me is that I thought it was just me, like I was not good at it. There was something wrong with me, but everybody else seemed to be doing fine.
mm,
And only later I realized how many people are truly afraid.
yeah.
people you would never think about, CEOs of large companies. Sometimes they're terrified to do a toast at their daughter's wedding
Yeah.
because they're so scared. And I knew one thing. I knew how to go from being absolutely scared, out of your wits, to being not just confident and in control, but actually enjoying it.
Yeah.
Getting to the point where you enjoy it and you think it's fun and you're like, oh yeah, I'll get to speak. Awesome. I knew how to make that transition. I knew how to make that journey, and I knew how to teach it. And only then I was like, okay, I guess I should teach it because this is so helpful and it's going to change so many lives. And
Mm.
it has. I've had hundreds of students, and all the time I'm getting emails or messages in the Facebook group saying that you've changed my life, you've changed my life. And it's such a great feeling because this is something that you don't just need public speaking if you want to be a professional speaker. You
Mm.
need public speaking right now for everything.
Yeah.
If you work, you can have any position in a company. You are probably
Mm.
speaking at a meeting, speaking and doing a presentation, particularly if you are a leader or want to be a leader or
Yeah.
trying to grow in the ranks. If you are an entrepreneur, you are connecting with your clients through videos, through Zoom, through live streams, through podcasts. We're not even talking about stage necessarily.
Yeah.
There are so many ways where we speak to an audience, and it's so important to be
Mm.
able to do it without fear. For a lot of people, it gives them the voice and opportunity to actually tell their story. When that moment comes, when you turn on the camera, right, turn on your mic, or when you step on stage, stand up in the meeting, you turn on that confidence switch and you're able to project the best
Yeah.
version of you right then
Yeah.
and there.
And something I try to inspire people about getting off the bench is that your life will be different. You'll once you push through that fear barrier, and I always say it's cutting through the blackberries, getting
Yes,
scratched and dinged up. But once you get through the other side, it's a different life. You're not held by those chains that you were talking about before anymore. And you can get out there and really bring your best to the world, which helps the world, but it helps you too. It's
absolutely. Absolutely. It helps both. It's
Yeah.
and that's why, Karen, I love so much what you're doing because you are inspiring people to make that change that they not only owe to themselves or
Mm.
their future self, but they owe it to the world. Because a lot of it's such a chain reaction, right?
Yeah.
We may do something because we just feel driven to do it, and we make that change. We get off the bench and make that change,
Mm.
right? But what we don't realize is by us making a change,
Yeah.
we may inspire a chain reaction of changes. But whenever you have to speak, usually, particularly when you are afraid, the very first thing we're thinking about is us, right? We know that we have to do a live stream, and let's say I decided to do a live stream on 3 self-sabotaging mistakes. And let's say I am very scared. What I'm thinking about before I'm turning on that camera is, oh, I hope I'm not going to make a mistake. Oh, they're going to judge me. Oh, they're just going to find out that I don't know anything, right? We go into this
Yeah.
crazy conversation, not crazy, but I mean, it's common,
Yeah.
but this self-sabotaging conversation in our head. And who are we focusing on? We're really focusing on us the
Mm.
whole time. What you have to ask yourself, and this is going to put you in the zone, but what you have to ask yourself is not how can I deliver the most educational presentation. What you have to ask yourself is how do I want to make my audience feel
Mm.
by the end of this presentation?
Mm.
Notice it's feel. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with exactly, what points you're going to cover,
Yeah.
but it has everything to do with the journey that
Mm.
you're going to take them on from the beginning of your presentation to the end.
Mm.
And if you think of any presentation that you've ever attended, most of them you don't remember. You
Mm.
wouldn't remember 99% of them only because they were educational. You listened, you got up, you feel the same, you left, you forgot. We only truly remember things that move us.
Yep.
We truly remember things that make us feel something special. And if you felt something and you got up and you went home and you keep on, driving home and you're still thinking about it, and a week later you're still going back because it made you feel something so special, you're going to remember this for a very long time. You're going to maybe remember this forever. Maybe this has changed your life. And so when you are about to deliver a presentation, the most important thing to think about is, how am I going to make my audience feel? And you stay focused on that. So the way the way you structure your presentation, the way you write it out, it all has to do with that one question.
Mm.
You build it around that question. You don't build it around your brain dump, because that's what most of us do. We just do a brain dump and we're like, here, very educational. We build it, right? We build it around, how do I want to make them feel? What do I need to say to make them feel that way? How am I going to structure it to make that feel that way? And how can I make sure that every sentence out of my mouth is forcing them from where they are right now, or maybe not forcing maybe not be the right word, but taking them, moving them, thank you, moving them from where they are right now to where you want them to be.
Yeah.
To feel, and whatever you want them to feel, you may want to make them feel inspired, maybe motivated to make changes. Maybe you want them to feel hopeful. Maybe you just want them to feel confident. Let's say you're speaking in a meeting, right? So it's not a motivational speech in any way or form, but you're giving an update on your project. How do you want to make them feel? I want to make them feel confident that the project is going exactly how it's supposed to be, or even better.
Yeah.
Or I want to make them confident that project is going on the right track, or will go on the right track, even if it's off track, right? It could be anything, but you have to be very clear on how you want to make them feel. And then you build your presentation around it. And this is when not only you're going to make the best connection, not only when you're going to get the most engaged audience, not only when you're going to have audience that's going to come up to you after and going to say, I loved it. You've changed my life today. But this is also when you're going to feel the least amount of fear.
That is a fantastic tip.
I actually have a second business that didn't fare so well with COVID, because my other business, which I wasn't really doing all that much, I was kind of running on autopilot, but I have a franchise called Nutty Scientists of Houston, which is all about making kids fall in love with science, hands-on science. I purchased a franchise, but I built it from scratch, and it's an all Houston franchise. And I started it about now 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, but I went all in, and I started doing it and built processes, and I'm like all very, former software engineer, right? So processes and making it very automated. And I've created a really, really great company. And my Nutty Scientist franchise became #1 franchise in the United States in sales. And it was kind of just running itself. And then COVID happened. And I had to put it completely on the shelf. Completely, because I felt very responsible. I wasn't even, I was scared to even run classes, even with masks on, because our concept is that we're like on top of each other. Everybody's touching the same thing, breathing it in each other's, faces pretty much, right? That's kind of the fun of it. And to expose the kids, to expose instructors, I was just like, you know what? No, I closed the physical location, and I put we got a lot of stuff canceled, because also, everything got closed, schools, libraries, everything last March. And since last March, we did a couple of occasional things, but I pretty much keep it on the shelf. At school, sometimes science is only sort of taught in a theoretical way, and sometimes it's not, it's not the fault of teachers in any way or form. It's sometimes, no, the lack of resources, where they can't bring those fun things that kids can do with their hands, or lack of time, or curriculum is just this way, right? There are a lot of reasons. And when you make kids fall in love with science at an early age, then they get to middle school, high school, and they have that seed of love already there. They never it may get hard, but they never stop truly, enjoying it and loving it. And that's what we were doing, on the preschool level, on the elementary school level, making them fall in love. And we brought this program to a lot of underprivileged kids, to a lot
Oh,
of
good.
inner city youth, and
Mm.
to see them experience something like this for the first time in their life, to kids who their role models may not be a scientist,
Yeah.
their role model maybe I just graduate high school, right? And for them to come to you, and I had the instructors, of course, doing most of the stuff, but I did quite a few shows myself, and they would come to you and they would just hug you at the end, and they would be like, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. I'm going to be a scientist just like you. And it's like, oh my gosh, this kid who never, ever in her life could have thought that scientist was a profession for her based on so many other factors,
Yeah.
all of a sudden has this little seed of a dream that it's totally possible. Sometimes you end up running a business that has nothing to do with what your core knowledge is
Mm.
or what your experience is.
Mm.
I've never taught kids before. I've never been in a kid's business. I've never dealt with kids in any way or form. But I think what's important for any of you who are thinking of possibly starting your own business, a lot of times, yes, it does make sense to do something that you know, particularly if it's more like consultancy business. And of course, you want to do something that you know. But sometimes you have to believe in that business and in the idea behind that business
Yeah.
and in the dream behind that business a lot more than looking at it going like, well, but I just don't know this.
Yeah.
Because this is something you probably can learn, particularly in my case, it was,
Yeah.
elementary school science, like, okay, I got that.
Yeah.
But it was more about, I love kids. I see the mission of this company as something so worthwhile and so important.
Mm.
And I was 100% behind it.
Yeah.
And that's what made me happy.
Yeah.
Even when I was tired, even when I was like, things may not have been going the way that I wanted them to go, that one kid who would come after every single show, after every single class, there would be somebody who will come to you and go like, that was so awesome. Thank you. We love you. And this is the best science is the best thing ever. Like that thing, that big picture keeps you going. So when you are looking to get off the bench and you're thinking, okay, maybe I'll start a business, you don't throw away ideas that may have nothing to do with what you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes is the idea behind that business
Mm.
is so important, and if you can get 100% behind it, that's all you need, and that you may be more successful in that than if you started a business where there is no big idea but it's something that you know.
If somebody absolutely needs to speak and they don't know what to do, whatever it is, for whatever reason in their life, they got no choice, have to speak, and they don't know what to do, what advice would you give them as their first step, apart from coming to you, of course, but
Of course, the first step would be to come to me, because you can enroll in my program, or you can even go through a lot of my free trainings that I have. So that would be the first advice. But truly, the first step, I think, the biggest reason a lot of us have fears, and a lot of times our fears are all revolving around I'm not good enough,
Yeah.
is because we all have these stories
Mm.
we tell ourselves, and and you call it different names, limiting beliefs or stories, or there are some other names, but some of us have lived with those stories all our lives, and some of them were created by our parents in our childhood. Some of them were created with love.
Mm.
That's just, unfortunately, love brought in certain stories because our parents were trying to protect us from
Yeah.
certain things in life, or they were the reason we have the stories is because some bad things happen. But
Mm.
all of us have certain stories, and by stories, let me give you an example. Some people say, well, I will never be good at this because
Mm.
I'm an introvert. I
Mm.
will never be good at this because I failed. That was my story, right?
Yeah.
I will never be good at this because English is not my first language. I will never be good at this because I'm just not important enough. I don't know enough. I'm not an expert enough.
Mm.
And and it could be anything. Or I will never be on camera because I'm not attractive enough. A lot of women have that story going. You have to truly evaluate your stories
Mm.
and separate what's true and valid from what's not true, and it's just you trying to create a safe space so that you don't have to get off the bench,
Yeah.
right? That's what a lot of people are going through. A lot of people hold on to their stories for dear life, and even when they hear that, no, that's not true, that's just a story you're telling yourself, they still prefer to hold on to that belief because it's safer
Mm.
to hold on to a limiting belief.
Yeah.
You feel safe because there is always an excuse.
Mm.
But you see, the reason I cannot do it is because I have this valid excuse. And only when you truly let go of those stories, of those excuses, that's when you're taking that first step
Yeah.
to becoming the best version of you,
Mm.
the most confident version of you. But it all starts from you looking through your beliefs and separating truth from fiction.
Where can people find you? Yep.
The best place to find me is my website, www.byvictorial.com, which is BY by Victoria, my name, L for Lioznyansky, which is my last name, and you don't have to spell it. That's why it's by victorial.com. And I have some free training right there on the homepage. You can go and watch some training videos that I have. And of course, I would love to help you inside of my Brilliant Speakers Academy program or my group coaching Brilliant Speakers Accelerator program and get you to the other side. If you've been stuck with the fear of speaking for a long time, this is not a death sentence. This is definitely something to skill. And like any skill, you can learn it, you can implement it, you can internalize it, you can make a habit out of it, and you can become great at it.